okay, students, to give you some ideas on the design and really to kind of go over file management. Don't forget that under your El Paso Community College OneDrive, you should have a folder, and under that folder, I ask you guys to make another folder called Final Project. And in there is where you're going to have the up to now three projects, three files that you're going to have: your final project, your Xsite, and Xtopo. Okay. So let me just kind of go over the final project, and in here is where we're going to put in our design on this final project. We are going to need to reference some other things. For example, we are going to reference at one point the existing ground. You're going to need that for your section views and other things, but we need to create that surface. Now, as far as the existing ground surface, right now it's XREF. So because it's on inside the XREF, I really can't create a surface of the existing ground contours and existing ground points. So I can't do that from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close my final project for now. And it almost seems to be best, because I already experienced this, where if you're going to work on another file, it's best to close one file and open the other one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Xtopo file, and I'm going to create the existing ground topo. And it's kind of a neat opportunity to go over data shortcuts once again, because this is the Xtopo that I need to create an existing ground surface. You are going to need it for reference at one point in the final project file. Um, in the final project file that we're using. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on the Xtopo, I'm going to go ahead and create a surface. So I'm going to isolate temporarily the contours, the two contours, and one of the points, and that will give me the information that I need for the existing ground surface. I'm going to go over here to the make sure you're in under the prospector tab, not in the settings, under the prospector. We're going to create a surface. Right click, create surface. I'm going to call it EG for existing ground. We're going to leave this default for now and hit OK. And then under the existing ground, just like we did on several projects, we're going to go and define it. So we're going to go here to definition. What information do I have? I have these contours. So I'm just going to, they're polylines. So I'm just going to define them as break lines. I know that there's a contours option here. I don't really use that too much, but you're welcome to explore that if you need to. But I'm going to define it as break lines. And then to define these are AutoCAD points. Okay. They're not blocks or anything. They're AutoCAD points. So that's going to be the second definition I'm going to use. So I'm going to go over here to break lines, add break line data, EG for description, and put select everything. Of course, it's only going to pick the break line data, which is the contours, and then we're going to come back and add our drawing object data. What drawing objects is kind of goes to that one by default, which is points. Existing ground description, hit OK, and then select everything and go define the points. Okay. We don't see the surface right now because it's on a turned off layer, so I'm going to unisolate everything. If that stops working, you can just use the command called lay on just to turn on all your layers again. And you should be able to see the surface now, and then just confirm that the surface is triangulating to each point. If it's missing, if it's not triangulating to the point, you might have missed the drawing objects portion of it. Um, and then you can also flip it into 3D just to kind of verify. We shouldn't have anything coming down to zero. If you did, you get something wrong. So we just need to make sure that we have a good looking surface. Okay. So the surface is going to be there for data purposes. We're not going to really use it. The display part, we're not going to use the contours of the surface. The contours we're going to use in our final drawing are the polylines of the topo surface. But we did need to create the Civil 3D surface here for data purposes. Now, we don't really need to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to existing ground and just to kind of check the surface properties. So right now the surface style is standard. And just to remind you, the standard right now is showing the triangles and border. So, we don't really need to see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just create another surface. I could have technically gone in here and just turned these off because we don't need to see the triangles and border. But the best thing is always don't really mess with the existing the existing surface styles. It's just best to create a new one. I'm going to go back to information. I'm going to call that one no display, and it's not going to erase the surface. Is what it's going to do is I'm just going to call it no display, and under the display I'm just going to turn off the visibility of the border, and really nothing else will be on, and hit OK. So there's our node. I'm going to change that one over to the no display, hit apply, and it's again not deleted, it's just not displaying it. It's still there. Okay. Now the other step is we need to share somehow the existing ground surface to our drawing. Okay, that surface right now only exists in the Xtopo. Okay, but I need to somehow share it. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a data shortcut within yourself. You're going to do your own data shortcut within your own project that you'll reference for yourself versus the data shortcut that we did a few weeks ago for McKinley Retail, where I created the data shortcut. I was the one designer and everybody shared my data. In this case, you're just going to share the data within yourself. So the way you're going to do that is you're going to go to data shortcuts, right click, and we're going to make a new folder. I'm sorry, not set. We're going to new data shortcuts project folder. So we need to make one. Again, just make sure you're in the Xtopo Prospector, and then you're going to make a new folder and just kind of verify that it does show the OneDrive, Pasadena Community College, your folder here, and that's under the final project folder. Remember how I had you guys create a final project folder? So it should show that there, and we're going to create another folder, and we'll just call it design. If I can spell it correctly, design folder. So that's where we're going to start keeping our shortcuts. So we'll just call it design folder. Make sure that again you have under the working folder and hit OK. Now, by doing that, what it did, it made another folder in here. Okay, and you're gonna have to do this just to show you on the File Explorer. If I go to the design folder, it started creating our shortcuts. So now we need to start populating the shortcuts with data. So we have the data shortcuts here. I always kind of mix these up. We created the new one. Set the data shortcuts folder, project folder, set working folder. Let me see. I think it's this one. Yeah, there it is. Hit OK. So I created the new one. I set the project's data folder. Um, what I probably should have done first, now that I think about it, it's I probably should have done set working folder, even though we're there now. So you might not have to do that one, but the working folder is really um, the final project. So if it's not there already or you're having some issues, that's the step we should have done first, is to set the working folder. We did create the new one. We set the data folder, and then if we're having issues, of course, you can also ask me a question. Um, we might have had to do this one first, but other than that, everything's working out nicely. So now the other thing too, it's now we need to add the existing ground surface to the shortcut to then be able to share it within the final project drawing. I really hope that's not too confusing. So that now that we have this data shortcut, I'm going to right click and create the actual data shortcut. Okay, I missed a step. Telling you, there's always those little steps. Set project folder, select it, hit OK. Right clicks, create data shortcuts. Okay. Oh, there it is. There's another thing. Just all these little steps. Sorry, guys. It's we need to associate the project to the current drawing. So I created the project, I created the data shortcut, but now I need to associate this drawing to the project. So I'm going to click here and associate the project to this folder, the design project folder, and all that information to then be able to create the data shortcut. Sorry, it's just all these little steps. And we're going to add for now the existing ground surface. I'm going to hit OK. And then if you notice now under the data shortcuts, you'll see the existing ground surface we'll be referencing. It's within the Xtopo drawing. So we're pretty much done here. We can save and close. Okay. So I'm not a fan of clicking on these because a lot of students like, where is this? I don't know, mister. It's in the little box. Well, where is those drawings? I'm not a fan of that. I always go back to my project file explorer, and that way I can go specifically to where I have my files, and then I can then specifically open the file that I need. In this case, it's the final project drawing. You really need to get out of that habit of clicking that mysterious box. Once again, why? Because we don't know where these are at. Sometimes you do a save as, it's under your documents, and that's where files get lost. So that should be a big no-no. By now, you should have learned that everything should be on your file explorer and know where to find it. Okay, if not, learn it and quick. So I open my final project, which is this one right in here. And under the final project, I have my two XREFs that I had created already, the Xsite and the Xtopo. And I need that existing ground surface, not yet, but might as well just create the reference. But under the data shortcuts, you should have this one linked. It kind of does it automatically. If not, you might have to go and either set the data shortcuts folder or the set working folder, one of the two, or both. That way you can be able to see specifically the data shortcut and then the surfaces. And then here we should be able to right click and create the reference. Um, the existing ground surface. So we're gonna, this is the reference, but it is gonna create a surface within this drawing, the final project drawing, of course, referencing the existing ground that was created under the topo. So there's existing ground, and for now, we'll just leave it under that style. For now, we're gonna change that in a little bit and hit OK. So there's not really having to define anything. It's already been defined under the shortcut, which was created from the Xtopo, and now you can see the surface, and you can kind of see the surface did a pretty good job. I could have probably done a little better job here, but that's okay. You can kind of see the new contours right on top of the other contours, which are polylines from the topo. So I'm pretty happy with this. I think it looks pretty good. So I'm going to turn it off. I don't need to see it. So I'm going to go back to existing ground surfaces, right click surface properties. And under the surface properties, it put it under a particular style, and we have that style, but we don't really need to use the style. We're going to go ahead and use the contours that are in the topo for our final CAD drawing. So this one already has all these surfaces style, the surface styles created for us. So I'm just going to go to node display. And that's pretty much just like how the other one was that we created. It just it has nothing displayed under the visibility of any of the components. Okay. So just change it over to node display, apply, and hit OK. So then we'll have our existing ground surface here for reference. All right. So then the next thing we're going to do is I want you to create a layer just like we did on the other project, site project C, site project D. Create a layer, put it in a color that's, that you can kind of tell where you've been designing. Set that current, and then we're going to go ahead and start putting in some layer, some feature lines. Now, this one's a little bit different because we do have some points that we're going to be using. The points we're going to be using for reference will have the gutter and top of curve. So we do need to trace that information because we're going to need it, because from there you're going to base your design off of those feature lines. You're going to go to grading, draw feature lines. I'm not going to use a style, so I'm specifically turning this off. The reason for that is because these do some weird things, and they have different purposes. Our purpose is really just to have a feature line for reference for our design. So I'm going to take off that style and then use the current layer, which is of course our 3D feature lines, and hit OK. And then, before that, I'm going to just verify my object snaps that I do have a node point turned on. There you go. Grading, draw feature line, no style, use current layer. And I'm going to start drawing or modeling 39, 29, 53. Looks like that's our gutter elevation. I'm going to snap to it, make sure it does say it's a node. Click on it, and it should verify the elevation already. Okay. And we're going to go over here and click this one. It calculated a grade between these 2 points. As a matter of fact, down here on the display, it'll even tell you the elevation that it found at that point, which pretty much matches. So very good. Several ways of confirming that information. 39, 21, 13, and I'm going to create an arc around the curve from here to here. Be careful, make sure you're picking the gutter, and then we're going to do the same thing on the top of curve in a little bit. I found the elevation 2149, very good. That goes back to a line, and I'm going to go to a line to the gutter right there, and it found the correct elevation, very good. So this is where we're going to be matching existing. We can't change these feature lines. That elevations are set. We can't change them. So that's where you're going to start basing your design from. So at that point, once you have the top of curve placed in, and I would, by the way, create another feature line with the topper curve because they're supposed to be 6 inches tall. For the most part, they are, but they might not be exactly 6 inches. But in this case, it looks like they really are. But once again, on existing ground, sometimes the surveyor picks up a topper curve, and the topper curve was not built exactly 6 inches tall. So just make sure you create another feature line of the topper curve. Remember that we're going to do the pavement design first. So we're going to go back in here and draw a feature line, and we're going to start designing. This is the fun stuff. I'm going to start at this point here. And remember that I mentioned that this site is well, I'm not sure if I mentioned it already. This site is dropping from a 35 to 34 elevation down to a 21 elevation. So it's actually quite a bit of grade. And of course, we do have to stay with a realistic grade. We can't go with something crazy. I know that in the past projects, I give you guys a 5% maximum grade. In this case, we can probably go a little bit more. Let's go with an 8% maximum grade. I've done those kinds of projects before here in El Paso. It's a little bit more extreme, but in this case, I think it calls for it. The only thing we cannot do is we cannot go more than 2% in the handicap areas. This one, any feature lines, any in this area, cannot be more than 2%. and the accessible path. We should have, if the architect did a good job, they should have an accessible path from the existing sidewalk up to the building. That one cannot exceed more than 5% on the accessible path. The other things that have to happen, obviously, it can't be more than 2% cross slope on the sidewalk in front of the building, and then the building, of course, has to be flat. Anything else can be up to a maximum of 8%. Where are we draining the water? We're going to drain the water all the way from the site to the roadway. Okay, to this roadway over here, which happens to be Saragossa Road. So we're going to do that, and that's the way this site's going to work. Let me hit escape, but again, 8% maximum, 5%, 2% on the handicap areas. A little bit of background on this project before we get too far. I wish we can make it a little bit more realistic, but just to show you where the site actually exists. It is here in El Paso. The nearest intersection is Zaragoza Road and Pelicano. And if I switch over to the satellite, it's actually this parcel right here. This parcel is a project that Mr. Iglesias did do a little bit of preliminary work on it, and he never finalized it. According to him, there's an issue with this parcel where the his client started a design on it, but then just kind of midway stopped and said, no, no, we're not going to continue. And I was hoping he would have finalized it because he would have then had an actual topo. This topo we created ourselves. Um, and I'm not sure where we got the elevations from, but I think we did get some realistic elevations along the roadway. These over here are not realistic. There's a big hill over here, and on the actual site, it's actually pretty flat. So the actual site on this one would have been a lot easier to design, but you know me, I like to make everything challenging. So we're gonna go ahead and use this topo that does show like a little hill and a little arroyo down here in Numego. But just to give you an idea where the site is at, it's over here across from Canitas Querétaro. Of course, this video is done in 2023. The restaurants change, but it is in this area closest to Zaragoza and Pelicano. And we had some existing pavement, so in real life we would have had to do a design and match the existing elevations of the existing pavement. So that's not really the case here. What I'm going to ask you guys to do, it's like if we're the first parcel, like pretending that nothing else has been developed. There is no um, este, daycare, there is no pavement, there's no funeral home, there's nothing here. So we're just going to proceed like if we're the first ones to develop it. And we are the ones saying that, okay, we're going to have the water drain out to the roadway, and everybody else will then have to, in the future, will have to match our elevations. Kind of like how if we were to do this one the opposite way, we'd have to match these elevations, but we're going to do it the other way. So I need everything to drain in this direction. And remember that I said maximum 8%, with the exception of the building sidewalks accessible areas. And we're just going to draw a feature line along the edge. Once again, considering your maximum grades, we're going to daylight that feature line. We're not going to put in a curb. It's just basically pavement up to a edge, and then a 2-foot bench, and then daylight, or create grading, however you want to call it. But that's what this needs to look like, and that's what I want for this site. And of course, you will then develop the design, feature lines, spot elevations, contours, surfaces, the works. And we do need that done within the allotted time frame. So good luck. I'll be here if you have any questions. Please follow the directions on your team's assignment.